Hello, RCL 5th graders. This is Mrs. Salyer here, and I'm going to be talking with you about how to represent multiplying fractions with an array. This is brand new for you, and I know that you've watched video 1, and you've either already completed Student Activity Book pages 453 and 454, or you're getting ready to do them together with me. This is new learning, so don't be discouraged if you don't get it right away. So, first of all, let's think of our equation. Alicia owns 3/4 of a section of land. She plants pumpkins on 2/3 of her land. What fraction of the entire section, that's important, is planted with Alicia's pumpkins? Well, what we're trying to find is 2/3 times 3/4. So I want you to go ahead and write your equation down there. And we're first going to figure out how much of this portion of land Alicia owns. Now, those should be divided evenly, but you know I'm not a great artist. That is 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, and I know all the way back in 3rd grade you learned about how to represent fractions such as 3/4, so that part should be easy for you. So it's easy to see that that's 1/4, that's 1/4, that's 1/4, and together those make up the 3/4 of the section of land that she owns. Now we're talking about what she plants. So this was vertical partitions. The 2/3 we're going to do horizontally. So we're going to divide it into her rows that she plants into thirds. So each one of these then would be 1/3. And she only planted pumpkins though on 2 of those thirds, which would mean this section, because that going in this direction, that's 1/3. Going in this direction, that's 1/3, and that's her 2/3. So you learned yesterday the rule for multiplying fractions, which is really the easiest thing to do with fractions is to multiply them, because you just multiply the numerators and the denominators. And when I say 2 times 3, I get 6, and 3 times 4 is 12. So now I'm going to look and make sure that my representation matches the answer. Are there 6 sections colored in to represent the pumpkins? Yes. The denominator is always how many sections would be in the whole thing, not just the part she owns, but the whole thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and it's a 4 by 3, so I know that's correct. And some of you are already saying, oh, but Mrs. Salyer, this goes reduced to the final answer of 1/2. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Olivia, just like Alicia, also owns 3/4 of the section of land. So once again, I'm going to divide it into 4 equal sections, or as equal as I can draw them with my limited art ability. And I'm going to color in the 3/4 that she owns. There's 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. So each one of these columns is what she owns. Now she's getting ready to plant tomatoes. My favorite. I love garden tomatoes. And she's going to cut her rows in the garden horizontally. So if she's planting 1/4, I'm also going to cut into fourths. And this one would be 1/4. So this would be the part of her land that's planted in tomatoes. Let's go back to our equation. We want to know what is 1/4 of 3/4. And then again, 3 times 1 is 3. 4 times 4 is 16. Now, some of you are saying, Miss Salyer, this is so easy. Why can't we just multiply it and be done with it? Because it helps you to learn what's really happening when you can visually represent it. Also, on TCAP tests, they're going to give you a visual representation. They may ask you to set it up, or they may ask you to find the answer that matches it. So one thing that I like to do, because when I learned multiplying fractions, I did not learn how to make a visual representation. So sometimes it helps me to solve the problem and then make sure that my representation matches the answer. Have I colored in 3 of the sections? Yes, and that's correct. Are there 16 sections in the entire piece of land? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Yes, so my representation is correct. Let's go on to Zachary. So by now you guys are probably already figuring out that the first thing that you're going to do is to divide it into the 3/4 that Zachary owns. He owns the same amount as Olivia and Alicia. So we're going to color in the 3/4 that he owns. I think this is kind of fun. I kind of like coloring. So now I'm getting ready to cut my rows, and they're going to go in the opposite direction. He's going to plant corn on 3/4, so I know I'm going to cut it into fourths again. Remember, each one of these is a fourth, and each one of them going up and down is also a fourth. Well, he's going to plant going across in this direction. That's 1/4, 2/4, and 3/4. Now let's go back to our equation. We're trying to find what is 3/4 of 3/4, and my answer should be 9/16. Let's see if our representation matches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yes. And I know that the denominator is 16 because it's a 4 by 4 array, and 4 by 4 is 16. I'm hoping this is starting to make a little more sense to you. Let's go on to number 4. Now, in the video immediately underneath this one, Mr. Trent, who is the 5th grade math teacher at Jefferson, talks about how he solved number 4 here on Student Activity Book, page 454. I want you to watch that too, because sometimes one teacher's explanation may make more sense to you than what another teacher says. So go ahead and listen to Mr. Trent talk about Yumiko and what she owns. She owns 5/6 of a section of land. So I'm going to have to divide this out into 6. Again, my artwork's not great, guys. Okay. So each one of these is going to be 1/6. And remember, she owns 5 of those 6. So I'm going to color in 5 of them. Now I'm just trying to do this quickly to save time, so I'm not doing my neatest work. She's going to plant peanuts on 2/3. So when I'm cutting my rows for my peanuts, which is going to be in thirds, I'm going to go across that way. Each one is a third. So here I go. I'm planting peanuts on one of the thirds going in that direction. And I'm planting peanuts on this other third going in this direction. So now let's go back to our equation. We want to know what is 2/3 of 5/6. 2 times 5 is 10, and 3 times 6 is 18. Let's see if our representation matches our work. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yes. And this is a 6 by 3 array, and I know that 6 times 3 is 18. It does. Now, I'm going to take you back one step further. It's been several weeks since we talked about reducing fractions. Remember, some teachers will tell you to reduce a fraction. Some teachers will call the same thing putting it in simplest form, and some people will call it putting it in lowest terms. All three mean the same thing. I typically say reduce it because you're making taking it down as far as it will go, and that's how I learned. So I look and I notice that both of these are even numbers, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, the number 2 will go into both of those. 10 divided by 2 is 5, and 18 divided by 2 is 9. So my final answer should be 5/9. Okay, let's go on. Hope it's making more sense. Walter owns 1/3 of a section of land. Okay, before I do anything else, I'm going to get Walter in shape with what he owns. I divided it into thirds. Walter only owns one of those, so I'm coloring that in. He plants lettuce on 7/8 of his land. So now I have to cut the rows for the lettuce. And I'm going to cut it into 8ths. So that's going to be some pretty small little rows there. Okay. And now he's going to plant that lettuce on 7 of them. 1, 2. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now let's look at our equation. We want to know what is 7/8 of 1/3. 7 times 1 is 7. 8 times 3 is 24. Does our representation match? We should have 7 indicated. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I say double colored or with slanted marks. I do have 7. Now, how many partitions or sections are in the whole thing? It's an 8 by 3 array, and I know that's 24. So that is correct. There is no number that will go into both 7 and 24, so it is already in lowest terms. Okay, here's our last one. Terrence owns 2/3 of a section of land. Remember, we're going to stop and we're going to take care of what Terrence owns. We divided it into thirds, and I'm going to color in 2 of them. And then we're getting ready to plant peas. He's dividing his planting rows into thirds as well. And he's going to plant these peas on 2 of those thirds. Okay? That's 1 of the thirds going across. That's 2 of the thirds. Now let's go to our equation. We're finding 2/3 of, remember the multiplication sign says of when you're doing fractions. I'm finding part of a part. 2 times 2 is 4, and 3 times 3 is 9. Okay? Does my representation show 4 sections colored in? Yes, that's where the peas are at. How many sections are in the entire array? It's a 3 by 3, so it's 9. So the answer is 4/9. You don't have to turn these pages into me today, because as you've gone over them, you should have completed them either on your own and checked them, or you should have completed them right along with me as we were doing it. We're going to be working more on this Monday so that you can get a better grasp of it. Your brain has to work with something a few times before it commits it to memory. So if you're still a little unsure, don't worry. You will get it. You may not get it yet, but I can promise you, you will get it. Thank you so much for watching the video and for doing all the great math work that you're doing. And I will be seeing you later. Bye, 5th grade.